Marisha here, and several weeks ago I did something that I don't usually do. I went on a tour because it was just easier for transportation reasons. And so I found myself on a bus full of tourists, many of them American. And indeed, the man that I was sitting next to, an older gentleman, was there with some of his family, including his adult daughter, who was seated in the row in front of us. And when she kind of heard the two of us talking and heard that I was living in London and not just visiting like they were, she turned around and asked, "Do British people hate Americans?" Um, and then she explained that she had found the British people she had interacted with to be not particularly friendly. And so she thought that they just hated Americans. And I recognize that there is an additional, I think, paranoia among Americans right now that people hate us because they conflate us with our government. And as a side note, I just want to encourage any Americans who were thinking of traveling abroad and maybe are a little hesitant to do so now because they recognize that Trump is really unpopular, and rightly so, among people abroad, and who worry about the administration's warning. I guess they just gave out a warning that's like worldwide travel warning for Americans. Just ignore that. Most people are intelligent enough to recognize that a person is not their government. And especially if you're someone who is going to behave themselves when they go abroad, you're just going to go be maybe a little bit quieter than you would in the States, observe local customs, try to blend in, just, be polite and courteous and thoughtful, then keep traveling. Uh, please keep traveling and don't pretend that you're Canadian as much as you might be tempted to, because I think that the more Americans who travel and do it the right way, that's a kind of soft diplomacy, right? Now more than ever is a chance to show the world that Trump is not representative of all Americans. We need we need that diplomacy of Americans to show like he does not represent us. Um, so that's just my side note. Anyway, so I think understandably felt like, oh, people don't like us. But I came to realize when she was kind of describing her experiences that what she was experiencing was just a genuine cultural difference. And this is something that came up in my previous video that talked about 10 things Americans miss when they move to the UK. And the last one on the list was American friendliness and optimism. And I said it deserved its own post, and so that's what this is. So basically it is just a cultural difference. And I think Americans will, when they first move here, will get the impression that British people are not friendly because British people are not friendly immediately. They're not friendly in the way that Americans are friendly. Americans are kind of notorious for how outgoing we are, that we will smile, and not just but like a full on toothy grin smile to complete strangers that we cross paths with walking down the street. And furthermore, if we get into a situation where we're waiting with a complete stranger, we're on a bus or we're sitting at a concert venue or a ballpark, and there's plenty of time before the event starts, it is not uncommon for Americans to just turn to complete strangers and start chatting them up. Because it's like, well, we already have something in common. We both like the Tigers or whatever. And within, 5 or 10 minutes, we probably know each other's names and where we're from and what we do for work and, what our family composition is and all sorts of stuff. because we don't back away from having those conversations. And in other cultures, it's considered intrusive. How quickly we will try to ask those types of questions and try to like get to know those things about someone. And similar here, right? Brits don't grin at you if you're a stranger walking down the street. And certainly when I first moved here, it was something that took some getting used to. And definitely when people asked me, what do you miss about the States? I mean, besides your family, I would say overt friendliness. And I think by saying overt friendliness, there was a part of me that already recognized, like, it's not that British people aren't friendly, right? But it's just that kind of like overt, like, I missed walking down the street and smiling at someone and having them smile back at me. In the Midwest where I'm from, that's not just like the norm, it's kind of the expectation. Like, it's rude not to. And so when you run into a culture where it's not the norm, it it's hard not to take it personally at first. And you have to really keep reminding yourself, like, it's just a cultural difference. Like, this person is not a rude person. They just come from a different background, right? And to be fair, it's not just in the UK. I experienced that when I moved to the East Coast. I was living in Alexandria, Virginia, and which is just outside of DC. And I remember going on walks and runs in my neighborhood, and I would cross paths with someone and smile at them and say hi, and I'd get nothing back. And I was like, this person is so rude. They're so ill-bred. What is wrong with people here? Um, because that's just not the culture that I'm from. And it took a little bit of getting used to. And then eventually, I think people did start to return smiles after they realized, like, oh, yep, she's in the neighborhood regularly. She belongs here, I guess. And I will say that there are times in London where someone will return my smile. I find that if I'm in a park, very often someone will return my smile. And sometimes they will beat me to it. They will smile and say hi before I get a chance to. And I think it's because they're in a park, they're just for a stroll, they're walking their dog or whatever. They're in a relaxed state of mind. It's not like the streets of London where everybody is heading to work or heading home, or they're on a mission and they just can't be bothered. Their mind is focused elsewhere. So I guess what I would say to Americans who move to the UK is that yeah, it does take a little bit of getting used to it, that you're not going to have that level of immediate sort of friendliness with someone that you literally just met and you're passing them on the street. However, once you get to a point where you have had a chance to get to know each other a little bit, right? So when you have been working with someone, or you have been going to church with someone, or someone is, your next door neighbor or whatever, they've had a chance to get to know you a little bit more, get a little bit more familiar with you. Then when you develop friendships, Brits are really good friends. I have some amazing friends here who have just been like crucial to my survival here. Like emotionally. I went through a period of time where I was homeless, right? My contract with the student housing was up because I graduated and I had to find regular housing, and the housing market in London is absolutely atrocious. And so there was a period of time in the interim where I was homeless and my friend let me stay with her. Another time where I was looking for work and I kept getting discouraged, and I would go to an interview and I would absolutely like smash it, but then didn't get the job anyway. And so it just felt like setback after setback. And I had a friend who, I texted her like, oh, I didn't get the job. And she texted back like, do you need a hug? And arranged to meet up with me so that I could get a hug. And then, we went for a walk and I was able to just kind of like vent and everything. So like, once you get to know them and become friends with a Brit, like, they are fantastic friends, actually. Um, it's just that kind of immediate, you know, goofy grin that Americans give. You're not going to get that over here ever right away, but once you get to know them, you'll get a goofy grin from a Brit every once in a while as well. They're very, very lovely and very caring people. And this, when you think about how they've set up their society, that really shouldn't come as a surprise, right? When you talk about, I mean, this is more than friendliness. When you talk about just sort of being humane and caring and empathetic, this is a society that has set itself up to care for everyone, right? Um, that they have NHS, right? They try to prevent people from falling through the cracks in a way that America is not. And in fact, America is going in the opposite direction, and it's quite frankly appalling. And I'll leave it at that without getting in too far into like politics. But to say that Brits are unfriendly or that they hate Americans is inaccurate. Um, it just is a difference in cultural expectations or cultural norms in terms of how you interact with strangers, and that's all. And it's true. There are times still where, my instinct, I can't get rid of it. I still like smile at strangers and I don't always get a smile back. But I just have to remind myself, don't take it personally. It's just a cultural difference. I'm going to keep being me. I'm going to keep being American in the sense that I will smile at people that I don't know. I'm not going to get rid of that part of my American identity. But I also am not going to expect that or be offended when Brits don't necessarily return that smile to a stranger. Like, subscribe, tell your friends how gnarly this channel is, and I'll see you next time.